Welcome back. Episode 3 of the Blameless Podcast. We're actually super excited about this episode. We kind of put it off for an extra week for that tithing in the New Testament podcast. But me and Seth have been talking quite a bit about this topic. I'm super excited about it. I would say it's one of my favorite topics that comes up. I spent quite a bit of time as a kid growing up with Ken Ham, and Kent Hovind is the other guy that I've watched a lot of. And so just super excited to talk about science in the Bible, or, arguing science with the Bible is another way to put it. What you've been looking forward to it, or
Yeah, oh yeah,
stressing
absolutely.
a little bit?
Well, I think I've kind of like you. I've done a lot of studying on this just in the past, but for this podcast, we've dove into it pretty deep.
Possibly too deep.
Right? Yeah. Well, yeah. There's a lot of information. If any of you have actually taken the time to dive down some certain paths, you get lost in the weeds of things, realizing how little you actually knew.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
About creation. But there's a lot of fascinating things too, just things that you can see God in every aspect of creation, and how much more just going down the process of trying to find evidence, it just is so evident to you that there is a intelligent designer.
Yeah.
And that he's personal and he's intimate, and that he created everything with a specific purpose and a specific design to glorify himself. And so you see that and hopefully we can kind of, portray that with the information that we give.
Yeah. No. Just it's hard to even think how people can't see a creator when they look around. Just everything that you have, everything that you see. The trees, the way the animals, they just know their jobs.
Yeah.
Like they don't question. They don't. Oh man, just the reality of like somebody saying that there wasn't a great designer, or creation wasn't created, like the Big Bang. Like, you want to talk about the Big Bang, right?
Yeah.
Ugh,
Yeah.
disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the big things that we're trying to really hit on, is just that we'll probably talk about some evolution. We'll talk about, we'll hit a bunch of different topics here, but one of the main things that I think we were both trying to focus on here was just looking at the creation account in Genesis and the Big Bang Theory, which is kind of the leading theory of creation for people who are atheists or evolutionists. And I hear a lot of people, a lot of Christians with well-meaning or good intentions, I should say, that say God created the Big Bang, or they'll say God, created evolution.
Yeah.
So I believe in evolution. I believe in the Big Bang, but I believe that God is the one who did this. And so some of the details that we were going through, just we want to shed some light on this, because it's a completely different belief system. They don't really coexist, and that's one of the big common misconceptions I think that we kept running into, is that if you take in certain details, even just we didn't do an exhaustive list.
No.
But there's just some information here that I think helps you to kind of realize, hey, these are completely different ideas, and they can't coexist with each other.
Right. And I also have heard it said multiple times, and now I tend to say it, is that, if you believe the Bible, and you believe that Jesus died on the cross and saved you, as a Christian, from your sins, then you have to believe the entirety of the Bible.
Right.
You can't verse pick. You can't just say like, oh, I only like these verses or whatever. Jefferson did that. You want to read his Bible, it's probably on display somewhere. But Genesis 1:1. We could end this whole podcast on Genesis 1:1.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's enough proof for me.
Right.
Just because I know that if I'm going to believe any part of the Bible, I have to believe the whole Bible.
Right.
So,
yeah.
It's where I'm at.
Yeah. And I agree. And I think the Bible is very clear that God has made it evident. Romans 1, that He has created everything, and the splendor and the glory is revealed through all of His creation. And you see, like we talked about, the function and the design. But I kind of wanted to start here, just kind of describing just the overall theory here of the Big Bang. The Big Bang theory teaches that the universe began in an extremely hot, dense state and began to expand rapidly. As space expanded, it cooled. During this cooling process, energy formed into particles which combined to create atoms. Over time, gravity pulled this matter together to form stars and galaxies. Planets later formed from material orbiting newly formed stars. And so essentially what they're saying is that there was this point, this single point, what they call the point of singularity. And so this single point at which they say it was the size of a period on a piece of paper. I've heard even smaller than that.
Yeah.
The universe, the entire universe was condensed into this one single hot, dense point. And all of a sudden, just expanded into this massive universe. And as it expanded so rapidly, it started to cool down. And as it started cooling down, there were particles that were actually generated and turned into matter. And there were certain gases like helium or hydrogen that come from this, that ended up forming stars. And then these stars, through the process of nuclear fission and fusion, created all the rest of the matter that we see. And it created this gas dust that ended up collecting and forming larger chunks of matter, which then gravity ended up pulling those large chunks of matter together to form the worlds and the planets.
Do you think the guy, when he was writing this, was like, "Oh yeah, this is good"? Like, he's like, "Oh, let me just add it. I just need a little more. Where's the dust at? Let me add that in there." Like, I just can't even. How many times have you ever seen mass destruction create anything divine or anything equivocal to what we have today?
You don't see any of that.
Never.
And
Never.
If we were to sit there and talk about that, I think just the common logic of our own minds would say there are so many things there that have to work out perfectly.
Yeah.
That you get to a point where you say, I have to have, it takes, I love the book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist.
Yeah.
Because that's the truth.
Yeah.
Is that you literally have to have more faith to believe in something.
To believe in nothing.
Or to believe that nothing come from something.
Right.
Something come from nothing.
Right.
And then in such an organized way, in a sequential way.
Yeah. Than to believe there was a divine creator.
Right. Yep. And so kind of to contrast that, obviously, we as Christians, we believe that God created the world. He created the universe, and He did so in 6 days. 6 literal days.
Right.
So in John 1:1-5, it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and He was with God in the beginning. Through Him all things were made. Without Him nothing was made that has been made." So in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And so all things were created through Him, through the Word, and without Him nothing was made that has been made. And then, of course, who's the Word? We see in verse 14 of John chapter 1, it says, "The Word became flesh and made His dwelling among us. We have seen His glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth." That's Jesus Christ. And so Jesus is the one who spoke the world into existence. And we see that the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit had a combinational effort in creating the world and in its actions. And so as we kind of dive through this, there are several, like I said, this is an overview of some of the evidences.
Yeah, I don't think we'll scratch the surface very well.
No.
Because like we started doing the research, and before you know it, you're down in a rabbit hole about that one thing. And we didn't go to college for any of this.
Yeah.
So, we were just trying to do like an overview. I feel like we're going to come back to some of this stuff.
Oh yeah,
down the road. I
yeah.
feel like it'd be a lot of fun to go into certain topics.
We'll build on it.
Yeah, and I think some of them will be really fun, and some of them might be a little more difficult. But no, I'm super excited to scratch the surface. Like you said, it's not going to be anything crazy in depth, but I think it's going to be good. We'll get to some cool topics, cool things. I meant to ask you the question when you were talking about millions of years.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know when the actual millions of years Big Bang Theory started in society? Like when people on Earth started actually like
billions of years.
Yeah.
When was that?
In like the 1700s, somebody brought it up. The guy's name was I think I wrote it down. Georges Leclerc. Okay. So in the 1700s, he was like, I think there was more than. So what I meant by that, I almost went down a rabbit trail. Up until then, up until the 1700s, 300 so-ish years ago, it was all 6,000-year-old Earth, 4 to 6,000 year old, like the entire world. Guy out of nowhere, 18th century. What if it was a Big Bang? And then by 1859, they started doing like the rock layers and trying to like date them, and then brought in which I'm going to talk about later, is the radiometric dating.
Mm-hmm.
But that was like 1950s. They started with like the billions. So it started as millions in the 1700s.
Okay.
Billions was like 1950s.
Okay. Gotcha.
Is when they started doing the what is it now? It's up to, I wrote it down.
13.8 billion.
What I got was 4.57 billion years is what they're saying.
Oh, you're talking about the Earth.
The Earth, correct.
I'm talking about the universe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I didn't even care about the universe because I was so focused on creation, like Earth creation. Oof.
At least we're on the same page.
Yeah, we're in the same universe.
We're on the same Earth.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, and I think it's, again, what kind of evidence did they have back in the 1700s?
Right.
We have more information now than we ever did, and yet it seems like society is more confused.
It's farther away from God than it's ever been.
Yeah. And I think part of that is because we're taught this stuff in school, as if it's just a scientific fact. And a lot of people, if you grew up in church, you understand that a lot of this stuff is not actually true. But, I've talked to people that just automatically assume, they're like, well, we all come from apes. We all just evolved from apes. And you just kind of start asking questions about that. And you say, well, why isn't there any half man, half apes around here?
Yeah, why did the evolution stop?
Right.
That's always my question. Why did it one day just, oh, we got enough, now we can reproduce. Why did it stop?
Yeah. And there's no link between the two separate kinds. So, and we'll get into that a little bit too. But kind of coming back to this Big Bang Theory, there was a few things I wanted to mention. Now I kind of want you to mention some things. But the one thing that I kept seeing over and over again with the Big Bang Theory is that, first of all, you have to kind of start at the beginning. They said that there was this matter, or this point.
Yeah.
First of all, where did the point come from?
Right.
Where did it come from? And a lot of times what they'll say is that they've done all these different searches through different, like, particle accelerator or particle collision accelerators. They have these strong kind of magnetic fields. They have they manipulate light, and what they found is that they can kind of manipulate. I guess I don't even know if they're manipulating matter, but they're manipulating an environment where they can create matter. And they say it's out of nothing. But is it truly out of nothing?
Well, it doesn't sound like it is to me if it's got light and
right. And that's
the environment.
And that's what you can go search it up yourself. Matter requires an immense amount of energy and some type of energy source to create a particle, to create any type of proton or electron. And so you have to start with a massive amount of energy, first of all. Again, second of all, there has to be specific conditions very, very specific conditions to be able to create all this.
Yeah.
And so, where did the energy source come from? Where did the particle come from? Where did any of this stuff come from? And you get to this point where really, I mean, when you say that you're starting, that something come from nothing, you're not really saying that in the Big Bang Theory. You're actually starting with a high energy source that collided or had some type of
something.
or had some type of quantum vacuum environment that allowed for this to happen. And you have to ask the question, where did that come from? And you see a lot of atheists that they don't have the answer. They'll try to find very unique ways to explain how something can come from nothing, but they cannot give a good explanation. And I think there's a video out there of Richard Dawkins, and he is in a classroom and he's trying to intelligently explain to a group of teenagers or college age students the definition of nothing by explaining something.
Right.
And they all just start laughing. And he's like genuinely offended by it because you can't do that. And so that's kind of the first start of what you see when you get into the Big Bang Theory problem.
Yeah. No, I was I can't even, I don't even know how people fathom it. Like when you said, you were like, let's talk about the Big Bang Theory in depth. And I was like, what is there to talk about? Like, randomness creates order. I can't get behind it. I can't even understand it. But I was reading through Psalms 90, and it says, before the mountains were brought forth, or even you had formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. And what I kind of got out of that is they're all talking about matter and order and all this stuff that was come out of nowhere. We know that God was there before any of that. And I'm not saying, I believe in creation because of Genesis, but some people try to say that, well, God put that matter there. You know, they try to combine that Big Bang Theory with God, you know. And again, it comes down to what I said earlier about if you're going to believe part of the Bible, you have to believe the whole Bible, which disproves the Big Bang Theory right off the get.
Right.
But I was just sourcing some scripture that was talking about omnipotent, omnipresent, before time, after time, always will be. So it was kind of like a backwards around a way to say that. But yeah, I don't even know how to articulate the Big Bang Theory. I'm super happy that you went into the detail.
I did go into it, yeah.
I appreciated it because I've never even cared to know, and now that I know, I can laugh at it even harder. And I mean that wholeheartedly. Like I don't mean to laugh at people who devote their life to that, because I understand. Like, you got to make money somehow. But
yeah, well, it's futile.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that the word science in Latin actually meant knowledge. And so you're trying to gain knowledge from a faulty standpoint, from a man-centered, godless standpoint.
Yeah, I pulled up the definition because I've actually never looked it up.
Yeah.
And while you were talking, I was like, I wonder. And the actual dictionary or definition is the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation, experimentation, and testing of theories against the evidence obtained.
Okay.
So it's all theories on what we can see. Were they there?
Right.
Where are they getting their evidence from? Technically, they have the now, which, I mean, we've learned a whole lot. Don't get me wrong. Science has done great things in the world because God allowed it.
Right.
God was always there. But were they there to see the Big Bang? Were they there to see those gases and that dark matter? I don't know. Seth went into detail. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't remember it all.
Well, yeah, and I think that's obviously they take samples of, they try to look at the environmental factors. There's something called the cosmic microwave where they see that the universe is hot. So they say, well, there was some type of hot density. They see that the universe is constantly expanding. I think one thing that they did was they measured the distance somehow between the light of this further galaxy over the course of time, and they found that it was getting further away.
Yeah, now I have heard that like there's definitely an origin in the universe, and that it's growing, it's expanding.
Yes,
which would make sense because it was created. But what was I reading the other day? And I have to be careful to say this because I didn't fact check it, but I was reading somewhere, and maybe we'll do a thing this week to make sure this is right. But I was reading that the universe is actually expanding in one direction. We always thought it was like outward, but they believe now that it's expanding in one direction. So that would kind of falsify the Big Bang, because an explosion would be like a sphere, essentially, in every direction.
Yeah.
And it almost looks like, again, I have to read into this, but I was just reading it, that it's actually everything is expanding in one direction, or like a general direction. It's not expanding out like they thought originally. So I need to research on that, but I was reading that this week.
Yeah, there's so much information. One thing that I had read, it was
fact checking things that you don't believe are hard too.
Yeah, that's true.
Because you don't have any drive to find out if it's real or not.
Yeah.
You just kind of read it and you're like, well.
Yeah. One thing I had read on Answers in Genesis, there was an article, and it was talking about the Big Bang model and some of the misconceptions there, or some of the arguments against it. And it says, the Big Bang model proposes that matter, hydrogen and helium gas, was created from energy as the universe expanded. However, experimental physics tells us that whenever matter is created from energy, such a reaction also produces antimatter. Antimatter has similar properties to matter, except the charges of the particles are reversed. The Big Bang should have produced equal amounts of matter and antimatter. Thus, if the Big Bang were true, there should be an equal amount of matter and antimatter in the universe today, but there is not. The visible universe is comprised almost entirely of matter, with only trace amounts of antimatter.
Yeah.
And one thing that I kept reading was that antimatter and matter will actually destroy each other.
Right, they cancel each other out.
They cancel each other out.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, if they've done experiments and they're saying this is how we come to this conclusion, one thing that you and I were talking about, even on camera or off camera, but we were talking about this, is there's something called confirmation bias. And confirmation bias, basically, we do that when we bring a certain belief system into, we bring our preconceived notions into the situation.
Right.
And so scientists try to insinuate that they're only about the empirical, verifiable evidence, that they're not actually biased towards anything. But we know that that's not true. And so that's evident in the information that is ignored, and that is evident in the information that is pursued. And so if I take information in, if I want to believe something hard enough, then I will go through the process to try to make sure that whatever I believe is whatever I pursue. And whatever I don't believe is set aside.
Right.
And of course, there's an argument to say that creationists do the same thing. There's I agree.
Yeah.
But that's because we truly believe that God created the universe. And so we look for ways in which that makes sense. And so, but I think the thing that we have to understand is that when there is confirmation bias, it kind of creates an environment that's unwelcoming to any information that doesn't actually fit the narrative. And you see that just through the scientific community. You hear these different scientists say, well, if I were to actually give this information or this data and I were to present it as if there is an intelligent designer, I would lose my funding for research.
Right.
I would lose my job. I would lose everything that I've spent my entire life's work doing.
Right.
And so they won't do it. And so information like this gets cast to the side because they say, oh, well, that's not even that big of a deal.
Right.
But it is. We're dealing with the laws of physics. We want to try to insinuate that the Big Bang followed the laws of physics, but at the same time, we ignore certain aspects of physics when it doesn't actually fit the narrative that we want to play.
Yeah, I was I was thinking about it just now. I didn't even do the research on this, just from what I remember. But like, so Big Bang Theory, you know, obviously a lot of nothing created something.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about how perfect the, or I'm sorry, not how perfect, but how, like, where the Earth is in relativity to like the sun
Mm-hmm.
and other planets, and how, like, if you do the science on it, I can't remember the exact numbers because it's been so long, but like there's like a very minute percentage. If it was any closer to the sun, we would burn to death. If
Mm-hmm.
we were any farther away from the sun, we would freeze to death. You know, everything lined up the way it is, the moon and the tides, like, to say all of these things happen by random chance, and there's not, like, in the realm of how big the earth is and how big the sun is, how close those numbers had to be for life to even exist on earth, is just, again, for me, not comprehensible. Like,
Right.
I didn't even do all the number crunching on it because, like I said, it just dawned on me. I remember reading about it, but like, there's not another Earth, there's not another planet in our solar system that we can live as freely as we do. They're trying for Mars and all that stuff, but it's not habitable, not naturally. So the oxygen level here, you know, the water, all the stuff that's on Earth is like perfect for human life. It's full of sin, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of bad things about Earth, death and disease and all that stuff, which happened in the Garden of Eden. But
Right.
for it to be able to live and breathe and live for 70, 80, 90 years on a planet floating through space, to tell me it came from a hot dot.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And I hate to say, I'm gonna keep making fun of it just because it's comical to me. I just
It's
can't.
honestly, it's ridiculous. And I'll tell you, you were talking about the earth being just in this space, and it reminded me of a verse in Job 26, verse 7. It says, he spreads out the northern skies over empty space. He suspends the earth over nothing. Okay. Job is one of the oldest books, if not the oldest book in the Bible.
Right.
They didn't have Google Earth.
Right. They just zoom out real quick.
They couldn't, they didn't know what we know. For us, we're like, oh yeah, the earth is suspended on nothing. It would not make logical sense for us to think that the very foundation of what we're resting on is just suspending in nothingness.
Yeah.
And it's so fascinating. They says that he hangs the northern skies over the empty space, and he suspends the earth over nothing. How would he know that?
Yeah.
That's profound.
Yeah.
That is profound that he would have that wisdom or that knowledge, and that ultimately come from God.
From God, yeah. Inspired through man.
And so it is truly interesting. A couple other things I wanted to mention, just some conflicts here, and then we'll kind of get into some of the stuff that you had looked up. One of them was that the universe, they say the universe was created 13.8 billion years ago. Obviously, we see that Genesis 1 describes creation as taking place over the 6 literal days, each clearly framed by the reoccurring phrase evening and morning.
Yeah.
And so you see that constantly. And then you see in Exodus 20:11, it says, for in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but he rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. So it was literally created in 6 days. Again, the Big Bang Theory states that the stars were created as a result of the helium and hydrogen gases that were off-put by the cooling of the universe. And the stars formed. And then the stars, through a process called fusion, it's either fission or fusion, I don't know which one it is, exploded, created more matter, and that created the Earth. And they say the Earth was a molten lava. or it was like molten, which I guess that would make a little bit of sense if there was molten. But let me rephrase.
Whose side are you on?
No, let me clarify. Because the Earth has lava, because of that would make a little bit of sense. Obviously, it makes no sense because the stars themselves they're only made up. They're not even made up of the actual components or the actual necessary uh, gases or whatever else it is out there needed to actually make the star.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Right.
So that doesn't make any sense. And the fact that this dust would form and create this clump, and so none of it really makes sense. I'm talking about the form of the actual world. And of course we know, which is interesting, that the earth was actually, let me go down here, the earth was actually formed out of water.
Yeah.
So 2 Peter 3:5 says, "For they deliberately overlooked this fact that the heavens existed long ago, and the earth was formed out of water, through water, by the word of God." So that's obviously conflicting, just that view. And then also, the earth was formed in the Genesis creation account. The earth was actually formed before the stars. So so the stars had not been hung or put in the sky
right
until the fifth day. So the earth is formed and created. Now the creatures hadn't been inhabited yet, but all that to say that the earth was formed before the stars, whereas in the Big Bang Theory, the stars are what created the earth.
Isn't it kind of crazy to think that like God created the earth to bring man to the earth? Like ultimately it was for us to what's it called? We worship God, but like we're not manage. What is the word I'm looking for of the earth? Like
to steward.
Essentially, yeah. We're supposed to take care of the earth.
Yeah.
You know, God put us on the earth to take care of it. But like, he got to like, would you say day 5 is when the stars? And he was like, you know what I think humans would like to see? You know, like people would like to see these twinkling dots. What significance do stars have in our lives? Nothing other than the sun, if you count that as a star. But Jesus doesn't, or God doesn't call it a star. He calls it the sun. So, you know, that's a controversial subject. But God was just like, let me give these people something to look at and give them shapes and let them figure it out. But like just the design, like something to do, something.
The beauty, but then also the glory, because the more we have learned, the more we see just how massive and powerful God is.
Yeah, for fun. He was like, got to day 5 and was like, you know what? Maybe I should give them
unbelievable.
some stars.
I mean, yeah, and think about it. Like the earth. I remember reading this a long time ago that the sun, I think, is 100 times the size of the earth.
Right.
And that there are stars out there that are way bigger than the sun. Just one star.
Yeah.
And there are, at some point in the Bible, it links the stars or equates the stars to the sands on the seashore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And we know that there are galaxies beyond our galaxy.
Right.
And it just keeps going and going and going and going and going.
We are not going into extraterrestrial life today.
No, we're definitely not going into that.
Don't put it in the comments, but do not expect a video on it.
Maybe in the future we'll add that to the list. But it's so interesting. It's just like the more we learn about God's creation, the more we study about the world and learn about this stuff. Because I do see science in the study that the information that we have gained so far, it is fascinating. We should study the world. We should study it, and we should come up with this information. It's just that the theories that are out there are so far off basis. One thing I brought up to you earlier too, and this is a big one as well, is that if you look it up, most people would say, or scientists would say, that the Big Bang was not chaotic.
Yeah.
But it would have to be chaotic. And you say, why would that have to be?
A release of that much energy, quote unquote?
Yeah. You would say, well, it would. they try to use an organized system,
Yeah.
such as physics, mathematics. They try to use this organized system to try to explain a chaotic creation that means nothing. And then they try to come up with all these different things. But the question is, if there is a law of physics, who governs that law?
Right.
There's got to be somebody who actually put those laws in place. And that's what you see even through creation. I remember they were trying to do studies back during the time of Einstein, and they were trying to figure out if light was chaotic or if it actually had a sequence. If there was actually some type of, uh, uniformity to the structure of light.
Yeah.
And at some point they thought, no, it's not. But then after doing different studies, they ended up finding out actually light is predictable.
Right.
And so now we manipulate light in so many different ways.
Right. We use it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
And you see that with electricity. Electricity is used constantly for different things.
Yeah. So what's funny is I was going to bring up not that scenario, but a similar thing of who holds, the laws together that we, gravity and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Colossians 1:17 says, and he is before all things, and in him all things consist, or are held together, was another translation. I mean, like literally God holds all of our laws and all, our lives, the earth, the stars, like he created them. He holds them all together. So like, it was funny that you said they questioned if light was chaotic or not. But,
yes. And that was actually my next verse there.
You're welcome.
Just that, yes. So if you go with the Big Bang, you have to realize that all of this stuff, none of it has a purpose. There's no intention behind a creationless, impersonal explosion.
Yeah.
There's no intention.
Right.
We're all just products of chance with no real purpose apart from what we decide in our own minds.
Yeah, what significance does that have?
And some people are okay with that. But creation was not intentional in any capacity or personal. But we see that God created the world with order and intention. And just kind of going back to this verse, Colossians 1:16 through 17, it says, for in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And so you see three different things out of that. And I put a few of them down. Ultimately, Christ is the goal. He's the ultimate purpose of creation. So there's a purpose behind the creation. That it's all for him. It's all created by him and for him and through him. So everything in creation actually points to Christ. And I think what's interesting about this is I used to think that when Jesus would talk about these different parables, he would come up with these different things, like talking about like the wheat and the tares, for instance, that it was kind of just random, that he just knew the structure of the creation and had used that as a good illustration in his story. But what I have come to believe more than anything is that the creation itself, Christ is the original pattern, and creation reflects and imitates him.
Right.
Not the other way around.
Right.
And so I was looking this up, just a few examples of that. I thought this was interesting. You see the parable of the wheat and the tares in Matthew 13:24 through 30. So Jesus goes on to explain that both grow together in the same field until the time of harvest. Why the time of harvest? Well, what happens with the wheat and the tares is they look like the same plant,
right,
while they're growing. But once they grow to complete maturity, what happens to the wheat? Well, the wheat bows down, whereas the tares stand straight up. Isn't that fascinating?
That's awesome. Yeah, I never even
And so you see, okay, Jesus knew that.
Yeah.
He knew that. And that's a picture of us, the wheat, as believers who will be collected and taken up to heaven.
Yeah.
And the tares that will be collected and discarded.
Yeah. Even better than to say that he knew that is that he designed that.
He designed that.
That's how he wanted it.
And actually that was designed after his plan.
Right.
It was not that he is before all things and created all things, and all things point to him.
Right.
And so
cool.
it's so fascinating.
That's
Another
so
one that
cool.
I was looking at was just light. And there's so much with light. I mean, you can go on for days with this one, but we see in John 1:4, it says, in him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. 1 John 1:5 says, God is light. In him there is no darkness at all. So we see that life is light, and we see that God is light. And we know that Jesus is light. And light has so many different character qualities, but you see in the way that God created the earth, you see light is the very first thing that he creates.
Yeah.
On the very first day, there was light.
Light.
Even before he creates the sun, which is just fascinating. And I wrote down for that one, it shows that he is the true source of light.
Yeah. Yeah, I got that. Yeah.
Yeah. He is the true source. It doesn't come. I mean, people could argue that, say, "Oh, our light comes." Well, we know when we get to heaven that Jesus, we don't need a sun,
Right.
Because he is the light.
The light. Yeah.
And we see that, but also that he is the source of all life. So you look at the plants, you look at the trees, everything requires light. Everything.
Yeah.
It all needs light to survive. We see that he is the sustainer of life. Light also sustains. So he's the source, he's the sustainer. We see that without him, the world would be in darkness. Without the light shining upon the earth, we would be complete darkness.
Right.
We'd be lost.
Because darkness, all darkness is lack of light.
Yes.
Darkness is not an actual thing, or I can't remember how to explain it the right way, but darkness is actually lack of light, just like cold is actually lack of heat. It's not its own thing.
Interesting.
I don't know if you've ever heard it explained that way. There's probably a better way to explain that, but I'm missing the.
I guess you could probably say the opposite too. Like heat is just the opposite, or the lack of cold.
But there's a way to explain it where it's not.
Okay.
I need to. It's another one I shouldn't have just shouted out. But,
that's why we're talking about it, because But that is, I mean, it's interesting. It's just so fascinating that God is light. Light also is consistent with the truth. It reveals and it exposes, and the truth is consistent with creation, in the sense that the all of reality finds its meaning and its value in the truth of the words that God spoke from the beginning. So literally the truth is just the standard by which reality is measured.
Right.
So if the truth is a standard by which reality is measured, everything we understand to exist today and now was ultimately created by the Word of God, who is the truth. And so everything that he said, everything he did, his plan, his purpose, and his design all point to him. And it's so fascinating how that happens. And so we see that Christ holds all things together, serving as the force that keeps the universe functional, organized, and sustained. And Christ exists before all creation, establishing his divinity and eternal nature. I read a quote that was really interesting. It says, it was by Frank Turek. It says, the cause of the Big Bang had to be timeless, spaceless, and immaterial and personal. And not to go too deep into that, but if you think about it, God had to be outside of time.
Right. Now, was he a Christian philosopher?
He's a Christian apologist.
Okay.
So he speaks on defense of the gospel.
Gotcha. Okay.
He's done a lot of research on this, probably more than we ever will in our entire life. And he's the one actually that wrote the book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist.
That's where I knew the name.
Yeah.
Okay.
He co-authored that book. And he was actually with Charlie Kirk. He's done a lot with Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So turning point. So he said that it had to be timeless, spaceless, immaterial, and personal. And so God had to be timeless outside of time, because if he was within time, he'd be bound by time.
Right.
And I thought, what does that mean, that somebody is bound by time? Time necessitates change. So think about this. When you say something is timeless, what does it mean?
It's out of time.
It means it doesn't change.
Oh, okay.
So like that's a timeless
We're
piece.
learning together
now. It's a timeless piece, right? It's a timeless piece. So it doesn't change. It's never changed. And God doesn't change. He's immutable.
Right.
And he's outside of this time. Then you think like spaceless. So why does that matter? And one of the things I'd read was a builder doesn't live inside a house before constructing it. Similarly, God, as the origin of all spatial dimensions, can't occupy space that didn't exist yet. God is immaterial and omnipresent, not located at one point, but present everywhere without spatial limits. And we know that, we see that in John 4:24, it says God is spirit. So God is a spirit. And then Colossians 1:15, it says he is the image of the, talking in reference to Jesus, it says he is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. And it's interesting because throughout Scripture you say, well, God is described as having ears or hands. And I was reading about that, and essentially what that is it's an anatomical or emotional term so that humans can better understand him. To put it lightly,
it's to dumb it down for us.
Yes.
I'll say it. I'm not scared.
Yeah. So we have to literally approach God with our limited frame of mind.
Right.
Because our minds can't comprehend.
It's almost to like make it relatable, to make it feel obtainable or achievable, maybe.
Yeah.
Or not achievable, but.
And God is completely outside of our mind. We can't comprehend him. The way I always tell people about doing this is, imagine having to never die, to having always existed. We can do that. Why? Because, well, it's not hard to imagine living forever. Now, imagine having never had to have been created.
Right. Yeah, that one gets me.
Yeah.
That's the one when I laid there and tried to think about that, and like your mind just goes to this blank space because it's unfathomable. Like we could never understand it.
Right.
And then I get the willies and I'm like, all right, on to the next one.
That's right.
Yeah, that's insane.
It's insane, and it doesn't. That's the thing, is that God is so eternal. He's outside of time and space. He's he's personal, but yet he's a spirit. Yet he shows himself in the person and the work of Jesus Christ. He shows himself through creation and the personal design. And we see that not only, like we just named two, with the light and with the wheats and tares, but you see that with the sheep. The vulnerability and the dependency that sheep have, and you see constantly the scriptures mentioning that. You see that through the harvests and through the seasons. You see that through the trees and the vines and all the references, the seed and the germination process. And I mean, there's just so much. You could go into so many different things. Creation imitates Christ.
Yeah.
Christ didn't imitate or make reference to an analogy that was abstract. It was something that he actually that was built and formed for him.
Yeah.
And his glory.
Yeah, I think we should do another podcast. I keep wanting to go this direction, but I know we're trying to keep it on topic of just kind of like disproving the Big Bang and like showing why the Bible and creation is real.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love to do one on the divine engineering of God, when he was like, I mean, obviously it only took 6 days, but I keep thinking about, you say light, and all I can think of is like how a plant uses light for food, and a plant is what turns carbon dioxide into oxygen for us to breathe. And like just that way of life had to be so precise. We could spend a whole week on just like going through things that were designed by a creator that proves he's real.
Right.
That's what I keep thinking about. Every time you say light, I think about cytoplasm and all that stuff. But anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
I think that would be fun to do one on that.
So I'm going to actually I'm going to hand it over to you
Okay, yeah. No,
to talk about some of the things that you had kind of
I'm
went
gonna
over
I'm
to.
gonna do my absolute best to explain this because I super enjoy it, but it is a little difficult. So I'm just gonna preface this with that, and then also the light comment I was thinking about, the darkness and light is darkness is just lack of light. I think other than when Jesus talks about, or when God talks about creating day and night, um, you can't, like, you and I can't necessarily create darkness.
Mm.
To have darkness, you have to hide the
Oh,
light.
that actually makes a whole lot of sense.
So
Yeah.
that's the part I was
Yeah.
missing. I don't know about the heat and cold. That might be wrong
Yeah.
because I mean there are ways to artificially make cold.
Which
But
is interesting because the Bible does talk about how the earth was dark and form. It says it was a void and it
mhm,
was formless. And then the Spirit hovered over the waters.
yeah,
And then light was created.
hmm yeah,
So
super
it's like
super cool.
something was there, but it was formless. It didn't have like a form.
Yeah,
But
that
then
would be
like
formless.
I,
It was
I
formless. It
know.
didn't have. Sorry. I hope they're laughing.
Oh, go ahead with what you say.
All right, man. Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about. It's called radiometric dating. And it's how scientists have claimed to date the Earth, essentially. Um, so one of the most popular ones when I was going through school was carbon dating. The problem with carbon dating is it's only good for about 50,000 years, quote unquote. And what they do is I'm going to try really hard to explain this. What they do is they take carbon and they know its half-life is like 5,000 years and change. And they pretty much assume how many carbon um, like the element carbon, how many molecules of it, I guess is the word, are in the rock or substance they're testing when it was alive or present, I guess. And then they do the math for the half-life and they keep breaking it down until they get their guesstimate, in my opinion, but their estimate. So like carbon dating was good for like 50,000 years is what they claim. Uranium they use for over 1,000,000 years. Potassium they use for the billion years. And then rubidium is the one I'm not super familiar with, but it's for like geological formations. They try to break down the time frame on it. Um, the interesting thing, you said the universe was like 13.7
13.8 billion.
billion.
Yeah.
Okay, so I gave the number 4.57 billion is what they estimate the Earth to be.
Mm-hmm.
I read an interesting fact that they have come to that conclusion from a meteorite. It's not even from anything they've tested on Earth. It was from a meteorite that they assume was around the same time the Earth formed. It's not even from.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah. Talked about reaching for straws, like
Yeah.
grasping for straws. Anyway, I thought that was an interesting bit. But there's three things you have to assume when you're using radiometric dating. One of them is the assumption of the original number of the unstable atom can be known. So they assume how many atoms, they weren't molecules, they were atoms were in that rock or um,
The sediment layer.
yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Layer. Yeah. So it says scientists have to assume how many atoms appeared to be at the beginning based on how many parent and daughter atoms are left. Now, when you do that, you also have to assume that the rate of change for that decaying atom didn't change
It was a constant.
in that million or billion years.
Right.
That it decayed at that exact rate,
Mm-hmm.
no matter the environment it was in. And then the third thing you have to assume is that there was no outside force that changed the decay rate or any kind of contamination, whether it be more of that molecule or more of that atom or less. So there's three assumptions right off the bat with carbon dating or I'm sorry, radiometric dating that kind of make it false in my opinion. If you have to assume or hope, and this comes all back to Ken Ham was in a debate with Bill Nye
Mm-hmm.
at one point, and he pretty much called him out and said that your philosophy about Earth is a belief just like mine is.
Right. Right.
And that was like, that should have just shut the whole debate down right there, because then at that point you're just debating beliefs. You might as well debate religions, you know.
Right.
So yeah, what my conclusion was, none of these three can be proven because no one was there to monitor it at the rate of the decay or whether it was ever contaminated. Now, I struggled to find a scripture to back that. And I was reading and I was reading and I was looking. And then I read Job 38:4. And it says, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if you understand. Declare if they understand." So nobody was there when those molecules and atoms were all in that rock layer. So if you weren't there, how do you know that it's millions of years, or that was the original amount of each individual uranium, potassium, rubidium?
Yeah.
Again, I'm trying really hard here to it was a lot to read, so I'm trying.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was awesome that he literally, when Job was questioning him about what his trials were, he was like, "Where were you, Job? You know,
Right.
were you there when I did that?" Thought that was super cool that it was even relatable. Some of the other cool things that kind of disproves the timeline that we can actually test. So Mount St. Helen, that happened in 1980. It erupted. Mm-hmm. 6 years later, they took a sample test from the lava, or I guess the cooled sediment, the lava. They took a test, and right off the bat, they were extremely surprised with how much argon was in that lava, because it was only about 6 years old. With their radiometric dating methods, it calculated to be 350,000 years old.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they watched it erupt in 1980. Explain that one to me. So then the other example I have is there's lava flows that have happened kind of regularly in New Zealand. I don't know. I'm not even going to try to say the mountain. It's like Ngauruhoe or something. But they know it to be like 50 years about was like the most recent one. And some of the sediment layers tested at 3.5 million years.
Really?
And they're active. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like you've almost disproved your own dating system because you have start to finish data on that, start to finish amounts of argon and the other one that they used. I didn't write it down, but they used another one.
So explain in further detail like how that disproves it.
So like I said, with radiometric dating, they have to guess how many atoms are in it to start with.
Yeah.
But with these scenarios, the two that I used, they knew how old that layer was. So when they tested it, they were already off. They had an assumption of what was supposed to be there.
Based off of what they had come to the conclusion of through the test results and what they had already the baseline of information that they thought.
Their test was no longer their test. It became a variable, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It definitely throws that all off. So then the fun side of it to me was showing that's the issue, and then talking a little bit about creation. We know, so I guess we don't know. Rock layer formations. Most scientists are going to say millions of years and a little bit of water. A lot of time, a little bit of water. Creation says a lot of water and a little bit of time created this. Mm-hmm. So when you look through evidence that we find, you find billions of dead things buried in rock layers laid down by water all over the earth. When it comes to fossils, we'll use the fish tank analogy. So if you ever had a fish tank, you ever had fish? Mm-mm. That's not going to work then. But anyway, it's fine. I'll still give it. So if you have a fish and it dies, normally they float. Most fish float to the top. Some will sink to the bottom. But after a couple days to a week, that flesh starts to fall off the bone, or something else will eat it. But when you find fossils in rock layers, they're completely intact. Obviously, the flesh isn't there, but you have to have the flesh buried to create a fossil. That's how it becomes petrified. So we have fossils of fish inside fish when they were fossilized.
Yeah.
Okay. So that tells me that happened very, very fast.
Rapidly.
Rapidly. I mean, that fish was eaten when it didn't make it. It was no longer swimming.
Right.
So in Genesis 7:11, it says, in the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month, on that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. I guarantee there was a lot of land being moved during the Great Flood. Now, I didn't go into a whole lot of proving the Great Flood happened, but you can look across any ancient civilization, and they all have a record of an ancient flood. Not just the Bible, even though the Bible is the only one I need. But there are there's a multitude source of tribes and societies that all believe in a great flood. And some would say that it was a localized flood, but then the rainbow says that we would never have a flood again. And we've had a lot of localized floods here lately. So I think that proves that it was a worldwide flood. So the other cool thing is, like, if you go look at the Grand Canyon, you can actually see the rock layers.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people will argue that, that little creek at the bottom caused all that over millions of years. But what you'll find is that there's actual rock layers that have the same exact genetic makeup, the same exact, what's the word I'm looking for? The rock on the bottom layer of the canyon and the top layer are very, very similar, but you will find animals from all ranges of life all the way up and down the canyon.
Right.
Which tells me that they were all walking together, and there was a massive flood that took them out, essentially.
Well, and you would find like fish, like up high.
Right.
And you would find like different, and there's fossils everywhere, all over the earth. So you're telling me that there was just like a bunch of just tons and tons of erosion that happened constantly.
Yeah.
All over the world. I mean, they say, I was watching, there's a documentary called The Ark in the Darkness. Mm-hmm. I would highly recommend it. It's a very good documentary. And it talks about the flood.
Really?
And it talks in depth. And it talks about how the waters burst forth from the deep. Mm-hmm. And how there would have been this volcanic, I don't know if there's an actual term for it, but this volcanic eruption that happened underneath the sea.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is if you go and look from space, you can actually see the scar of the bottom of the sea where it would have erupted.
Right.
And they talk about how it would have created such a massive impact that it would have created these huge, huge tidal waves.
Yeah.
I mean, bigger than we've ever even, I mean, it would have stretched all the way across the nations. And from this, the land mass would have actually separated. It would have pushed the land mass over. But then it would have, through the tidal waves, it would have hit. They would have hit the land.
Yeah.
And what they were saying was, it was kind of a combination. They actually said that they believed the earth was flat at one time, because during the Garden of Eden, it would have been easier for mankind to actually get around.
Yeah.
And so they said that through the collision.
Now you're saying not flat Earth, but you're saying that there were no mountains,
right?
And no
right.
valley.
Yes.
Making sure we're on the same
Definitely
page
not,
here.
Yeah, we're not talking about flat Earth right here. But they were saying that actually the mountains possibly would have come up through the collision of the actual continents.
Right.
So it would have brought up the mountains, and then through the tidal waves actually hitting the mountains, it would have wore them down. And so if you think about it from the United States standpoint, imagine if a tidal wave hit the eastern side of the United States and it went all the way across the nation. What do you see? You see, if there were massive hills over here, what looked like mountains would now look like hills.
Right.
But you have like the Appalachian Mountains. Then the water would have continued to go forward, and it would have went through and created a plain.
All the way out.
All the way out. And then it would have got over to the other side.
I've never thought of it like this.
Yeah, it would have got over to the other side, and it would have rested and created these massive ravines and these big mountains.
Yeah.
Which is where you have the Grand Canyon.
Grand Canyon.
And you got to ask yourself, why do we have so many underwater caves? Why do we have so much? It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
The amount of information that they had they were looking at all kinds of stuff. They were seeing like fossils of trees that are upright,
Yeah.
and they said if it was that would have an entire tree, and this is all over the world, an entire tree for it to have been rapidly covered by rock sediment, and these were massive trees, it would have had to have been a huge erosion.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, cataclysmic.
Cataclysmic, yeah.
I did hear Ken Ham say, I was watching one of his videos yesterday, and I did hear him say that they actually have fossils of animals over top of the actual animal, where the land had actually, like where the animal was walking, and the fossils of their footprints are covering them. The footprints are higher than the animal.
Really
In fossils. And they also have fossils of raindrops.
interesting.
Yeah. Yes. Like, I guess somehow the water was encapsulated and then
Yeah.
fossilized.
Mm-hmm.
But like, how fast did it have to happen if it started raining and then the fountains of the deep opened up and caused this giant, like you're saying, sediment movement? Crazy.
It is crazy.
Couldn't imagine being on the boat.
Yeah.
Couldn't
Oh
imagine
my
being on
goodness.
the boat.
Yeah.
But the last thing I was going to talk about real quick before we move on is this is kind of like my own opinion, I guess I should say. But they say that like diamonds and rubies and all this stuff take millions of years, and it's from, you find them at lava deposits around volcanoes and stuff. But now we make synthetic ones in 3 to 4 weeks. We can literally take the pressure. It doesn't take time. It takes high pressure and heat and the right materials. So if we can do it in 3 weeks, what could God have done in 40 days? You know what I mean? With the flood, essentially, is what I'm getting at. All that pressure, immense pressure. Imagine an earthquake now. We freak out when we see like a 7 or an 8 on the Richter scale, and that just shakes the ground for a couple hours. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of bad things that happen, but we're talking about like the whole earth was swallowed up. Diamonds were a dime a dozen during the flood, in my opinion.
Right.
So I thought that was cool. We're making them in 3 to 4 weeks, actually making them, not like to distribution side of things, but they want to tell us that the average diamond's 1 to 3 billion. I typed up what was the average time frame for a diamond. They say 1 to 3 billion years right now.
Really?
Yeah, but we can make them in 4 weeks with a little bit of heat, a little bit of pressure, and the right chemical. Okay. All right. Cool. I don't know. I hate being lied to.
I think anybody that actually takes the time to actually investigate these things, it doesn't even take that much effort for you to just say that doesn't even make any sense. You've got to have you're assuming a lot of information with a lot of missing data and a lot of stuff that goes against what you actually are saying in terms of like the laws of physics and chemical reactions, and like you're talking about, you're testing things in an environment that has a stable temperature, assuming that the temperature is the constant in the environment. And part of the problem with that is that, and we'll kind of get into that too, maybe, just like talking about some of the dinosaur remains and stuff that they were finding, and they were talking about the flesh that they found on the dinosaur.
Oh yeah, we were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, and how they have tested this, and the creationists are saying there's absolutely no chance, no single way that the collagen on the flesh of the dinosaur wouldn't have broken down, even just 100,000 years back. But you're saying that dinosaurs lived anywhere between 150 to 66 million years ago. I think that's what it was. 250 to 252 to 66 million years ago.
Haven't they found fossils of humans?
Yes.
Next to dinosaurs?
Yes. Yeah, they found, there is a creation museum if I can find it. There was a creation museum down in Glen Rose, Texas. And I think there's actually several different accounts where they have actually found,
In the same rock layer.
yes,
Like the same
sediment layer.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. And this one guy over in Texas said that Richard Dawkins and Stephen J. Gould actually come over, who were, I know Richard Dawkins, but I don't know Stephen J. Gould. Apparently they come over and they looked at this fossil, and they had found in the rock layer, it was apparently the Cretaceous. Yeah, I probably said it wrong.
I wouldn't know.
It was the Cretaceous limestone,
Okay.
which if you look at the scale, they've dated, like you talked about, they have certain dates for these rock layers.
Yeah.
And they found in that a tool, a handmade tool.
Yeah.
So it had metal, it had wood, and it was sitting there right in that rock layer. And they also found in there a dinosaur footprint and a human footprint.
Yeah.
Actually, on that one, I think they just saw the human footprint. Yes, it was just the human footprint. But what was fascinating, so it didn't have the dinosaur footprint, but what was fascinating is that they're saying that this rock layer was, millions and millions and millions of years old, and the humans are only 2 to 3 million years old. And yet so when this guy said that they had come over and actually saw the evidence, that they said they just dismissed it. They said it's impossible.
Yeah.
And apparently the Stephen J. Gould was the one who, he was very, very familiar with the rock layers.
Yeah.
And Richard Dawkins said that's not from the Cretaceous rock layer. And he said, actually it is.
Really?
Yeah. And they just left.
Well, that's enough. We made ourselves look bad. That's enough. I was going to say, I was watching that same video I was telling you about with Ken Ham. Or it might have been Kent Hovind that I was watching. He said that sometimes it's hard for people to wrap their minds around millions and billions of years. They just hear that and it's like, oh, okay, whatever, because they almost try to explain it so vastly that you're not interested in the fine print, like the logistics of it.
Yeah.
So I read something the other day, and it was, if you take seconds. Did I tell you that? Have I told you that before? So if you take seconds, how many seconds do you think a million seconds is? How many days? Take a swing.
How many seconds is a million days?
No. How many days is a million seconds?
I have no idea. I don't even want to guess.
It's about 11 days. Do you know how many seconds or how many days a billion seconds is? This is to show you how big the difference between millions and billions is.
What is it, like 30 years?
It's 37 years.
Is it really?
It's 37 years.
Wow.
Now, somebody gave me that to show me like the difference between $1 million and $1 billion when you're a billionaire. But then I was just like, think about that in the seconds for the time frame. We're talking billions of years. It's not even a fathomable amount of time.
Right.
But I thought that was cool. 11 days is a million, and 37 years is a billion for seconds. I was trying to think. The only other thing I wanted to add to this one was I was reading about Charles Darwin's first book, On the Origin of Species, and he was a huge evolutionist, right? Like,
do you want to expand on that now?
Well, I was just gonna throw this out there because we were talking about divine creation, and I mean we'll probably bring this back up when we do like an actual talking about creation in its divinity, because I think we should. It'd be a fun one.
Yeah.
But I was just gonna say, in his book, he even admitted, and there's some controversy about this, but the statement's in the book, and it said, life was originally breathed by the Creator into a few forms or into one. So even the guy who like stood on evolution was like, there's got to be something more to this than what we're seeing. There's got to be, how do these animals know what to do? How do these animals do what they do?
Right.
So, but yeah, we'll probably revisit that because that's a big deal. I guess we're gonna call it part 1, science and the Bible, the Big Bang in creation. I don't know what we're going to call it yet,
Yeah.
but thank you again for tuning in. I'm not going to be mean. I'm not going to be mean, but we really need more people to like and comment. Okay, my mom can't hold the comment section down. Okay, please dislike if if it's a crappy topic. Feedback. We need feedback. Just need to know where to go. What are you guys enjoying it? Are you not enjoying it? We're enjoying it.
Yeah.
We're having a great time.
Right.
It's unfortunate you guys aren't physically here, but I guess we'll see what part 2 brings and where it goes.
Thank you.